traffic coming up in just a few minutes at 8:35. The gap is closing between justice and the legal system thanks to a new Maryland law that goes into effect in just a couple of months in October. It is the Child Victims Act, which lifts a certain statute of limitation for victims of sexual abuse. And I'm with sexual abuse attorney and survivor and advocate Sarah Klein to share more about her story and the impact of the new law. Thanks so much for coming in today and joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So Maryland is a go right now as far as the legal standing. We wait until October. The new law is in place, and it will enable people to do what?
To come forward. So traditionally, statutes of limitations have been extremely archaic. And what we've learned is the average age of reporting child sexual abuse is 52 years old. And the law has not supported the victim coming forward later in life and having any recourse in terms of lawsuits. And so Maryland has been exemplary in passing this law, which will eliminate the statute of limitations for civil cases, which means anybody who was abused as a child in the state of Maryland now has as much time as they need to come forward and get access to the courts.
So the hope now is that people who are in Maryland, if they are reliving or lived with any of this childhood trauma that maybe they carried with them, they could do something about it. So now you want people to come forward, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Attorney General's office released an incredible report in April, essentially stating the corruption and protection of clergy members within the Archdiocese of Baltimore dating back to the 1940s. And so those folks who've been living with this for decades upon decades finally have good law where they can come forward, they can name their perpetrator, and they can hold the institutions who enabled these perpetrators accountable.
Clergy gets a lot of the attention. This definitely is not only limited to anyone involved with clergy. This is anybody, right?
Absolutely. In my case, I was a victim of former Team USA gymnastics Dr. Larry Nassar. We see this in sport. We see this in schools, universities, anywhere where an adult has the ability to be near children. We see this all over.
So Maryland made the change. That law will take effect in October. How's the rest of the country doing?
You know what? We're taking it state by state. It's been a battle. And what we see in many states is they'll open this window and lift the statute for a finite period of time, whether that be 1 year or 2 years. Maryland lifted it indefinitely. So this is incredible, groundbreaking, and I'm really proud to be able to come to the state of Maryland, meet the survivors, and hopefully walk them through the legal process.
And you're continuing as an advocate and a legal expert now. You're continuing with the rest of the country, right? That fight continues, even though you have a victory in Maryland.
It continues, absolutely. The state of Pennsylvania has been a very, very tough one. We continue to work all over the country.
So I want to ask you, Sarah, about your own story because you've been able to inspire other people to come forward. Obviously, you were involved in one of the most public cases that we've seen in recent time with Dr. Larry Nassar and the gymnastics. You were at the forefront of this, but for a long time, you didn't come forward. And then you had the opportunity to do so. For you on a national stage, walk me through that moment for you and then what has changed after that moment.
It was really, really difficult. Once you sort of let that cat out of the bag, there's no dialing it back. So I had to make a very conscious decision to come forward live on national television and put a face behind the story. For me, it's been an incredible part of my healing process to be able to now be an attorney representing survivors of sexual abuse, to be able to lawyer with love, and to be able to walk people through the legal process. It's very, very difficult. I won't mince words when it comes to that, but it's been also incredibly rewarding and a huge honor to be able to do the work that I do.
Talk for just a minute, though, about the difference, because, and I know this is an important point for people who are victims. You had two people that you would have loved to address in court, I'm sure. One of them you were never able to.
Yeah.
The other, Dr. Nassar, you were. How important of a moment of, and I don't think there's ever closure, but how important of a moment is that for a victim?
It was an incredible moment. I got to stand 4 feet away from somebody I knew my entire life, somebody whose wedding I attended, somebody who was a part of my family, and speak aloud what I experienced and to say every last thing I needed to say. Now, I recognize most survivors are never going to get that moment. You know, whether the perpetrator has since passed away or whether they're just not going to get that moment in court. I feel very lucky to have had it, but there are ways to gain closure without that moment. It was sort of like a TV moment, if you will. You know, it's this stuff you see in movies. It was incredible, but like you said, our other perpetrator died by suicide, our gymnastics coach, and I didn't get that closure. But there are ways to do it, whether you're at a podium in a courtroom or not.
So for anybody in, especially Maryland now, where we're talking about the law that is in effect, as we kind of put the wraps on this segment for now, look forward to talking to you again in the future. But what do you recommend that people, if they are a victim, now they have this opportunity perhaps from something that might have happened years or decades ago, who do they contact? What steps do they take? Do they reach out to an attorney such as yourself first or reach out to law enforcement? What's the best way to handle the situation?
I think both are great. This Child Victims Act opens the window for civil lawsuits. I'm a civil lawyer representing survivors. I suggest they get in contact with lawyers who've been doing this a very long time, who do this exclusively. We've partnered with an incredible firm in the state of Maryland, Michael Belsky, and I encourage people to reach out, have that initial conversation. It's our job to make it as easy on you as possible, so don't be shy, don't be afraid. We'll walk you through it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us this morning and sharing your story, Sarah. Thanks so very much.
Thank you so much.
All right, Sarah Klein, there's the information if you'd like to find out a little bit more as well.